Thank you. And I appreciate the Healthy West Haven Collaborative and Dawn Shapiro for inviting me out today to share a little bit about what I know about mental health and its link to physical health and what the organization NAMI Connecticut does for individuals as well as caregivers of people with mental health challenges. I actually have a PowerPoint, but honestly, it's normally about a 45-minute, and I'm not going to put you through all that. We may page through a few germane slides, but for the most part, I just want to talk to you folks about what NAMI is about and my experience with the organization and how it helped me and my family when we were struggling with this type of illnesses. And before I get into the presentation itself, I appreciate the fact that the previous speaker, Kristen, talked about the whole mind-body connection and how, if you have a physical health condition, it often will affect your mental health. There definitely is a mind-body connection, and the medical profession is slowly coming on board with that whole concept, which is great, because they are tied together and they're not separate entities, and they should be treated together. So, NAMI as an organization is basically chartered with providing three things. Support in the form of support groups for both caregivers of people with mental health challenges as well as people in recovery from mental health challenges. We do education classes that are free as well as the support groups are free. The education classes talk about the different types of mental health conditions, their symptoms, the behaviors that people will often exhibit, talks about medications and things like that, and I'll get into that in a little bit more detail in a few minutes. And last but not least, legislative advocacy. NAMI is a national organization. There's a NAMI in all 50 states. Our headquarters is down in the DC area. We do legislative advocacy both at a federal level as well as on an individual state level. Our Connecticut office is located up on Farmington Avenue in Hartford, and we have a big presence at the state capitol both during the legislative session as well as the other months of the year, working with our members as well as other like-minded coalitions on our legislative agenda. So, in order to explain what NAMI does, really, I'm going to use my own experience as an example because it kind of, I think, illustrates a lot of some of the value the organization provides. And in order to do that, I'm going to go and take you all back in time to when my son, who is now 36 years old, was at the time entering his senior year in high school. And at the time, John was like the all-American kid. He was an honor student. He was a member of his wrestling team. He was a good-looking kid with a great circle of friends. And his life up until that point looked like he was on this nice trajectory to graduate high school, go off to college, get a degree, and go land a nice job out there somewhere in corporate America and live the American dream. Unfortunately, during the beginning of his senior year in high school, the wheels started to fall off of that whole American dream scenario because we started to get notices from the school that John was not turning in his work and that he was not passing the exams and he was not attending classes. And not long after that, we got a notice that no parent wants to get that John was in danger of not graduating. And his mother and I kind of like, how can this be? How can he not graduate? He's an honor student. What's going on here? Well, what was going on was John was developing bipolar disorder. And that began what I like to describe as an 8-year-long roller coaster ride of every parent's nightmare. John was drinking and drugging. He was also smoking cigarettes, which we weren't thrilled about. But he was also getting in trouble with the criminal justice system. He was homeless at various stretches during that 8-year period of time. He was also in and out of the emergency room and inpatient psychiatric hospitalization. But most of all, he was suicidal. In fact, he tried to kill himself. I can't honestly tell you how many times because, frankly, I lost track. But 2 of the attempts were at our home. And the second attempt was in front of his sisters, who were 3 and 5 years old at the time. And at that point, we said to him, I said, John, we love you, but you can't live here. This is just way too much chaos and drama you're bringing into our home, which is our sanctuary, our safe space. This is not working. And, we really did not want to do that, but it was really the right decision to make at the time. Now, the good news was right around this time, my wife discovered NAMI. And she dragged me, kicking and screaming, to my first NOMI support group. And I say that because, for some of the gentlemen here, maybe you can relate to this. I'm a guy. I don't like to ask for directions when I'm lost out in the world driving around, and I don't like to ask for help. But, I went, and it was wonderful. The support groups are facilitated by other individuals with lived experience. I mean, they're trained. They're not, unprofessional. They know what they're doing. But these are people who've been down this road. And it was just such a warm and welcoming group that greeted us when we walked in there. Because we went in there with a lot of trepidation. We didn't know what to expect. We were very nervous about it. It just was very uncomfortable, but it didn't need to be because the people were absolutely fantastic. In fact, I still to this day, even though I work for the state office, I still volunteer as a support group facilitator at the local affiliate up where I live in Manchester because it's that important for me to not only give back, but also to share some of the things I learned along the way. So in concert with going to the support group, we took their family-to-family class, which was a lifesaver for us. It talked about the different types of mental illnesses. It talked about medications and what they do and their side effect. But most importantly, what we learned was coping skills. How do you maintain your own sanity when your world's been turned upside down? And there's a lot of chaos and drama in your life. How do you take care of yourselves? And how do you help your loved one without enabling them? And I can tell you when we fast forward through those 8 years that, John is doing fantastic now. He has been clean and sober for 10 years, effective this month, which is fantastic. He doesn't smoke anymore. He bought his own condominium with his own money about 6 years ago. And he got married about 5 years ago to a wonderful young lady. And 2 years ago last month, they had their first child, my first grandchild, little Sophia. I can show you pictures later if you want to see them. And his life has regained this trajectory it had been on before he got sick. Now, I like to share this story for three different reasons. One is it illustrates the help that NAMI gave us as a family. And it really was life-changing for us. But it also illustrates that people can and do recover from serious mental health conditions. John is just one of many examples I can cite, whose life was really a mess. I mean, no one was sicker than he was. He was just really a real basket case for about 8 years. But people can and do recover, so you should never give up hope, because everybody knows somebody who's struggling with one of these illnesses. The other reason I share this story is to reject the stigma that is often associated with mental health conditions. People don't like to talk about it. People don't like others to think, oh, geez, maybe me or maybe my family member or my loved one is crazy. No, we don't like to use those terms because these conditions are actually very, very common. I mean, Kristen earlier cited some of the examples about the co-occurrence of anxiety and depression with people with COPD. I can tell you that I read an article just a few months ago from Scientific News that cited 5 different studies that had been done both in the U.S. as well as other countries that tracked people from childhood through their 30s. And the numbers are really stark. It showed that approximately anywhere from 65 to 83% of the adults that were, adults at the end of the study, had experienced at some point in their lives a mental health concern. Think about that. Up to 83%. That to me illustrates that, it's really the exception rather than the rule. If you're able to go through life, you hit the lotto and you never have a mental health condition. So no one should be ashamed of this stuff. Help is available. There are all kinds of wonderful new therapies and medications that are out there to help people. Certainly as an organization, we provide, again, free support groups and free education classes. So there's no excuse not to get the help that you need, and there's no shame involved because really these are very, very, very common illnesses. What else can I share? Let's see. What do we have in the slide deck? Let's take a look here. Those are the big things. We've talked about support, education, and advocacy. Who do we serve? We serve over 8,000 people a year. We have 13 people on our staff. We have 10 local affiliates. Oh yes, that would be remiss if I didn't talk about our local affiliates. You're fortunate here in West Haven, you're kind of surrounded by some of our local affiliates. There's NAMI Elm City right over here in New Haven. There's a support group that meets in Hamden, and there's another support group that meets down there in Milford. And we also have one of our connections, which is a support group for people in recovery, at the VA Center here in West Haven. So we've got a good, strong presence in this part of the state. All right, what else? NAMI as an organization is really a member-driven organization, and it really, our volunteers are our lifeblood. In fact, if there's anyone here who has some time on their hands, we're always looking for volunteers, not only to facilitate our support groups, but also to be teachers for our education classes or attend health fairs. Now, here's a list of all the affiliates. Again, Elm City is the nearest one to right here. If you're down east of New Haven, I was at, we're working with the folks at NAMI Shoreline just last night. We were doing a cable access show that'll be posted hopefully sometime in the very near future. Keep going. All right, who do we serve? Again, people living with mental health challenges, people in recovery, as well as their caregivers. And that's young adults. We have support groups also for children of school age. If you're a parent of a school age child, you have some kind of unique requirements because you have to navigate the school system. All right. I love this slide because the first time I ever gave this presentation, I stumbled like, I had a real hard time articulating the point of this slide. So I went back to the office afterwards and I spoke to our executive director. I said, Kate, help me out with this because I'm not sure what the point is here. And the reason I didn't understand is because when my son got sick, it was never a question of, is he going to recover? It was a question of how do we go about doing it. But that is actually a fairly new construct. I can see from the crowd here, there's some of you that are old enough to probably remember a time where if you had a serious mental health condition like bipolar or chronic depression or schizophrenia, you likely were going to be put into a hospital situation somewhere and basically spend the rest of your life there. There was no concept of recovery. There was no concept of getting back to a normal life. It was basically, you go into the hospital and that's it. Your life as you knew it was over. That was never part of my inner dialogue or my expectation with my son. It was that he was going to get better and he was going to be able to, resume a normal life. So certainly as an organization, we support that. We're not about warehousing people. I mean, if you've watched the news lately, you know what's been going on up at Connecticut Valley Hospital. There's these allegations, and actually there's proof, there's videotape proof of some of the staff there abusing patients. Some of these, hospital situations are not good. And certainly as an organization, we promote recovery, we promote resiliency, we promote community-based services so people don't have to be warehoused in a situation that's certainly less than optimal. All right, around that whole concept of recovery, we certainly promote all these recovery-orientated services you see listed here. Supportive employment is a big one that's relatively new. For a long time, people thought that if you had a serious mental health condition that, work was not a good idea, way too stressful, that's probably not something you should do. We've actually done a 180 on that. We realize now that work is a wonderful thing for everyone, including people that may be dealing with a mental health challenge. The ability to get out and engage with the world at large, the ability to kind of get out of your own head and be making a positive impact, and the ability to make some money is really a very positive thing. It's a great form of therapy, believe it or not. So supportive employment is something we're very, very keen on. Certainly supportive housing. And you're working through these, but that's okay. How much time do I have left, by the way?
A few minutes.
A few minutes? All right. Well, then I'm going to try to wind this up. Oh, yeah. We certainly provide through our support groups, help for people with anxiety and depression. In fact, that's probably what I should do with my last few minutes. Are you going to post the presentations up?
Correct.
All right, so the presentation will be up there, but I've hit really what I consider the high points, what we do and where we do it. So at this point, rather than drone on and on, anyone has any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Where would you be located if we needed help?
If you need help, we have, like I said, 10 affiliates that are scattered throughout the state. Again, the closest ones here are in New Haven, Nami Elm City, and they run education classes, and they do speakers and different events. There's a support group in Hamden. There's another one down in Milford. And again, if you're a veteran and you're part of the VA system right here in West Haven, we have a
Okay, good,
presence.
thank you.
And if you're not from around here, but you came down for the day, go to our website, which is namict.org, or call us if you don't like using the internet, because some people don't. Our phone number is 860-882-0236. And I will be here afterwards. I'm sitting over here at my little table. So if you want to come by and get a card or something, feel free. Other questions? No, come on.
Excuse me,
Yes.
where in New Haven are they located? 'Cause I live right downtown.
They have events in different locations, so there's not like a physical, I believe, office you can visit. They just do events at various venues. You know, our
Do you have
physical.
that information today?
Yeah, if you go on our website, or if you come see me later, we'll pull it up.
Yeah, okay.
I looked on our website before I got up here just to refresh my own memory, and they typically don't have like a storefront that you can walk in through Monday through Friday. They just do events at various times in the community. Other questions? No other questions? Oh, you guys are too easy. All right, well, I will be here afterwards. Like I said, my little spot of the world is right over here to my right. So if you do have other questions, or you want to come by and get some information, I'd be happy to talk to you. And again, thank you for having me. We really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about what we know and what the organization does. So thank you.